off we go. Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, December 20, no, not 20 yet, December 16. And this is the webinar on global success strategies. My name is Christian Höferle. I am the founder and the owner of the Culture Mastery. And I'm curious to hear why you guys are here. I'm sure you all have different reasons for joining the session. Let me know in the chat box what brings you here. What is your interest in our 12 success strategies for global business? And just to give you a spoiler right at the start, there are more than 12 success strategies for global business. I simply picked 12 that I really like and I think that are important. Once once you get to work a little bit more with me, you'll recognize that there are a few other strategies that are similarly important and that didn't make the cut for this webinar. So Nikki says she's got 600 students learning to be global professionals. Well, there we go. That might be a good reason to be interested in success strategies. Excellent. Thank you, Nikki. Jennifer, to see what you're suggesting are the most important considerations to work across cultures. Excellent. All right, you guys come to the right place. And Daniel has a noon meeting at Eastern time. Oh, wow, Daniel, I do not envy you. So that's the 13th success strategy that I didn't include on this list. Mind people's time zones, will you please? And I hope I was inclusive enough with this time slot to capture as many wake hours across the globe as possible. Suzanne says, from Chicago, always seeking to expand knowledge in the subject area. She lives and works globally every day with a Japanese husband and increasingly hires folks from diverse backgrounds. Great to hear that. Thank you, Suzanne, or arigato. And that's the extent of my Japanese. All right, then let's get right into it. So all of you are primed for this topic. I don't have to tell you why we're doing this, but for those of you who are new to me or new to our company or new to this field, if you work in a global context, you will quickly find out that what works at home will most likely not work the same way abroad or with your partners, clients from other cultures. And that while this in today's world seems to be a given and people expect and respect that, how to go about it seems to be a challenge for quite a few still. That's why clients come to us, because they try to figure things out. They want to figure out, how do I get better at working with my either foreign customers, counterparts, team members, people that are from a different cultural background, whether they're in my team or in my supplier base, or whether they're my customers, or all three of those, or many other facets of this global interactiveness and interconnectedness. So I selected a dozen success strategies that I think are quite relevant. I'm going to have you out of here unless there's a whole lot of questions. My plan is to have you out of here by 20 minutes before the hour. And those of you who are on Indian time zone, subtract 30 minutes from what I just said. All right, so success strategy number one, self-awareness. Know thyself. And this may sound self-explanatory or an easy statement. However, we will not be successful in adjusting our behaviors, our communication style, our work style to those people that are different from us unless we know what we're comparing it to. So unless we have a comparison benchmark, who we are ourselves, know thyself, be aware of how our personal communication behavioral preference is, unless we are acutely aware of that, it will be really hard to find out what the potential gaps to other behaviors might be, or what am I comparing my behavior to. So how do we do this? We typically use a portfolio of assessment instruments, or calibration instruments. We like to work with a cultural assessment tool and a personality profiling instrument. And those in conjunction can help us explain or decipher or bring to our awareness our own preferred communication style. And once we have that, we can start comparing it to that of others. So that's where everything starts. Be aware of who you are and how you like to do things. Number two, respect other worldviews or other models of the world. Everybody makes up their own model of the world. We have a set of what we consider to be normal. And if I am increasing my mugshot here and putting myself over there, you might actually see me go in and out of the picture even more. So when I do the air quotes, when I say normal, it is because normal is an arbitrary setting. It's not normal around the globe. It's normal for you and maybe for your family or maybe for some of your colleagues. It may not be normal, and it is most likely not normal for people from other parts of the world or from other cultural backgrounds. So, being mindful of other people's models of the world is a critical awareness that comes after the self-awareness. It's easier said than done because when we're under duress and under stress, we default back to our normal, to our what I call factory settings, like the smartphone or the computer you're looking at right now has factory settings, and that is the normal. And once you download an application or an app that doesn't work right away or is a bit glitchy, or you need to play with the settings, then you set it to the normal of your device. So that's the adjustment process, right? Um, there's also, when I say respect other worldviews, respect other philosophical approaches. That might be also religious approaches, but I'm digressing here. So how people create value systems is part of that worldview. And some of you know that I'm originally from Germany, and there used to be an explorer, a German explorer, also a real polymath by the name of Alexander von Humboldt. And there's a quote that's attributed to him that I quite like in this context. And he allegedly said, "The most dangerous worldview is the worldview of those who have not viewed the world." So, unless you have viewed the world, your worldview might be a little bit limited to that of your navel, or to the bubble in which you were raised. So, I'm not discrediting that. Not everybody has had the opportunity to leave their own cultural environment. But as we do and become aware of ourselves, and as we leave our cultural comfort zone, the respect for other worldviews is acutely critical. Yeah, Tracy, I love that quote too. Yeah, I'm glad I find agreement on here. That's awesome. Also, a a strategy that has worked well for me and many of our clients is understanding that no behavior in and by itself is good or bad. You may experience behavior that you don't like, that is unfamiliar or uncommon or uncomfortable to you, because you simply cannot gel well with that behavior. And yet, you have a choice whether you want to make that mean that somebody is a bad person or has a bad intention, or you can make that mean that they do act upon or do act with a well formed outcome in mind that is positive for them. Now, it's still an unfamiliar and uncomfortable behavior to you. So, we, as those who leave our cultural bubble, who interact globally, need to become detectives. What could possibly be the positive intention of that behavior that I find so uncomfortable? So it's a mindset switch. We are sometimes hardwired to quickly jump to the conclusion that behaviors that we dislike are inherently bad, or that the person behaving that way has something bad in mind, or is not acting in our interest, or is weird or not normal, or whatever value judgment we want to throw on that. It takes practice to convince ourselves that whatever that behavior might be, I'm presuming that there's a positive intention. And watch what will happen, because it will change the way you go about these interactions. It will change the way you give meaning to other people's behaviors. And I find that a strategy to work in your favor, hence a success strategy. Listening to relate and not to respond. This is a success strategy that I find very, or that I need to underscore, especially for people from a quote unquote Western context, where our communication style tends to be rather individualistic or driven by our own agenda. So listening to relate, not to respond, is trying to say, or is saying, hey, whatever you're receiving as message from somebody else, pause your busy mind, tell your mind, hey, well, let me ask you this. How many have caught yourselves? I certainly did. How many of you catch yourself sometimes in conversation when you're listening to somebody and already formulating your response to what they're saying while the other person is still talking? So that is something that I think trained behavior. That is something that I grew up with, and I still work around getting not rid of it, but keeping it under control. Listening to relate means shutting your own agenda up for a second, suspending your desire and urge to jump back with your agenda, and letting whatever the other person is communicating to you sink in, and maybe giving yourself that couple of seconds to search for that positive intent that was missing earlier for you because you didn't recognize it. So, listening to relate means developing your emotional intelligence, building rapport with another person in order to help you become a successful detective in finding out what the other person's positive intention might be. And here's a big one for me because I come from a culture that is not really good with admitting mistakes. So as I said earlier, I am German, and many other cultures have similar educational concepts where at least my generation was brought up to always portray perfection and infallibly um, demonstrate my competence. And if I don't do that right, then that would be a ding in my credibility. I would see myself as having failed. And it wasn't until I left my home culture that I was introduced to this axiom or this strategy that failure is actually only feedback. It tells us, our environment is telling us, okay, this did not yield the outcome that you had in mind. This did not work. Uh, Thomas Alva Edison said, I didn't, well, it took him, I guess, that's the story. It took him 1,000 attempts, 1,000 experiments until he figured out how to create an incandescent light bulb. So he said, I didn't fail 999 times. I got feedback. I learned 990 ways how it doesn't work. And he learned from those mistakes. Now, that's also a mindset shift. Do you want to tell yourself that you failed? Or do you want to tell yourself, okay, my environment is giving me feedback. This is not how I get to my finish line or to my goal line. Let's try something else. Let's alter the approach, right? It is um, it is actually how you allow yourself to talk to yourself. You may have heard this before. We are typically our own worst critics. So check in with yourself and ask yourself, are you allowing anybody else in your life to talk to you the way you talk to yourself? And chances are you're the worst person when it comes to talking to yourself, right? So if you decide to make it mean a failure, then that's your choice. We as humans have the decision to, or the choice to make more resourceful decisions for ourselves. So let's look at intercultural global interactions as a learning curve. You will not get it right immediately. You will step on people's toes, and that is not failing. That is telling you, okay, this did not work. So it's not so much about how you avoid mistakes. Sure, you want to be as good as you can be, and yet the magic lies in how you recover from a faux pas, how you learn, how you use that feedback to get better the next moment. And as you do that, pace yourself. So this is a kind of play on words because as you will learn in a little bit, I'm a sucker for neurolinguistic programming or NLP. Some of you might be familiar with it. If you are, let me know in the comments. And if you have no clue what NLP is, let me know in the comments as well. You'll learn a little bit about that towards the end of the session. When I say pace yourself, that means take your time, slow down. Because in a global context, most of our communication happens in English. It is not my first language, as you can probably tell. I have a little bit of an accent, and sometimes I'm looking for the right phrasing. It's an app that I downloaded on my operating system, right? And sometimes it's glitchy, it's still improving. So when you communicate in global business and use English as the common language, whether it is with your clients or within the team, pace yourself. Not everybody speaks that common language at the same level. You might have improved, or you might be a native speaker. Even worse, let me raise my finger. The worst English speakers in the global context are those who are the native speakers, because they have the hardest time pacing themselves and not recognizing that others within their work context may not be as fluent and proficient in that language as you are. And if you are a English as a second language speaker like myself, and you think that your English is quite solid, there might still be people around you whose English is not as good as yours and who are struggling to keep up. So pace yourself, reduce the amount of jargon and industry lingo, because not everybody will understand that right off the bat. You won't hit a home run, or you cannot expect people to step up to the plate. So for those of you who are outside the United States, you may also scratch the back of your head, because those are jargon phrases from American English that don't really work well in even other English speaking countries. So pace yourself, watch your jargon. So why is this a play on word? In NLP, we use pacing as a technique to build and continue to uphold rapport with other people. You pace another person's body language, you pace another person's um, tonality, and you pace another person's choice of words in order to create commonality with them. More on that a little bit later. So pace yourself, quite an important strategy. Also, check in with yourselves. Are you still holding rapport? Are you still relating? Are you still listening to relate to the other person? Are you still respecting their worldview? And also check in with your audience. Are they still with you? How do you do that? I like asking questions. I like uh, when I do a presentation, like right now, which of these ideas have you liked best so far? Which of these strategies have been the ones that you resonate most with? Let me know in the chat box. Checking in with you right now, practicing what I preach. So now this is your time for you to tell me what you liked, what is a little bit iffy for you. So Nikki says the first one, excellent. Still waiting for the others to give me your feedback, give me input. That is a way to check in with people. Ask for feedback, solicit it. Suzanne likes to pace yourself, and she's very interested in LP. Well, I will um, have something for you towards the end. Stay tuned. So checking in, hugely important, especially on a format like this where I'm the only talking head and you guys are silenced, and the only way you can communicate with me is via chat, because that's the webinar feature thing. In our training programs that we do live online, there is going to be a lot more interaction. The check-in with you will be multifaceted. Suzanne says she loved my appearance. Oh, on the Ceotar panel. Thank you. Well, not everybody else watched that. So, but yeah, I think there's a recording on YouTube somewhere. Jennifer is still thinking about the worldview quote. Excellent. Well, you get a recording of this so you can practice it for yourself. Use it. It's not my quote. It's Alexander von Humboldt. That guy was a smart cookie. All right, next one. Scan for directness in communication. So this is something that I learned the hard way because I come from a cultural background that is where it's quote unquote normal to direct very directly. So I say what I mean. I do not leave anything between the lines that is open for interpretation. I say it like I see it. And also, I am quite comfortable in a confrontational directness because if it serves finding the truth of that debate, then let's fight it out. I'm perfectly fine with that. Other communication styles do not appreciate that at all. So, as you communicate, as you listen to relate, as you pace the other person, watch for levels of directness or indirectness and adjust your communication style in the moment. It may not be easy in the beginning. I know for myself how hard it was for me and sometimes still is to tone down my directness or and to decipher other people's indirectness, to search for the hidden meaning in what is not said. And remember, listening to relate, if you pay close attention, that means if you pay attention to more than the words that are said, if you pay attention to also the tonality of how a person speaks and their nonverbal cues like their body language, that will help you um, sift through the indirectness if you yourself are a more direct communicator. So scan for directness. Ask quality questions. One of my mentors many years ago said, he or she who's asking the highest quality questions will have the highest quality outcomes. Now, I said it earlier, the questions are generally better for rapport building and creating commonality than blanket statements and or even value judgments. Now, how you ask quality questions is how you can suspend your own judgment in the phrasing. A lot of a lot of uncomfortable behaviors, a lot of unknowns, a lot of unfamiliar interactions often trigger questions that begin with the word why. Why did you do it this way? Or why are you saying it like this? And what um, what does this mean? And why does this not work? And why did you not understand me? So whenever you ask a question that starts with why, you're raising the other person's defenses. Why implies a covert or sometimes even overt judgment, right? So try to ask open-ended questions. So instead of why did you say it that way, or why did you do that, you could say, hey, what made you do this, or what exactly was your desired outcome when you did it that way, or how does your way of doing it compare to the way I suggested? Is there something that we might have in common, or is there something that we need to reconcile? So there are, you can ask questions in a less confrontational way. You can ask questions that do not trigger a yes or no response. So if you ask questions that only give you a yes or no option, that limits the your experience and that of the person you're communicating with. So ask with genuine curiosity and not with judgment. Ask questions that show to the other person that you're curious in them and not questioning their behavior. High quality questions yielding high quality results. Next strategy, mind your, hang on, let me go to the question in the chat box. Nikki's asking a concept questions to check for meaning and to gauge whether the level of language being used is enough to be able to understand. Paraphrase, do you mean? Nikki, I'm afraid I'm not quite sure what your question means. That is my perceptive limitation and has nothing to do with how you phrased it. And can I still ask you to rephrase the question? Maybe I have a good answer. And if not, then we'll have a call afterwards to figure this out, hopefully. Okay, so she says, sorry, not a question, but an offer of info. So a concept question is to check in for meaning and gauge whether the level of language being used is enough to be able to understand. Now I get it, see? Thank you, Nikki. Settled that. Um, Mind your laughing matters. Humor is a beautiful thing. Humor is, I would argue, universal, but the way we tell jokes is not. And that can be quite a tripwire when we have cross cultural communication interaction. What you think is funny may cause misunderstanding at best, or even a falling out as a worst case scenario in other cultural contexts. So, unless you have a solid grasp of what the behavioral norms are in the culture that you're trying to be funny with, I would be very cautious of how much humor you want to infuse your talk or your presentation with. So, if in doubt, err on the unamusing side. But if you feel you really have to include humor because you're such a funny person, and your messaging will only shine and make you more human by making it humorous, give your audience a little bit of context, explain to them why and how your joke is funny in your cultural context. And they still might look at you like you're from the moon because they still don't get it. At least you gave them some context. And I will never forget the presentation that I gave to a predominantly Asian audience, and I even prefaced my joke. So I made sure that the audience knew that, hey, here is a joke that's funny in my culture. And they all laughed very politely. And I felt very validated until I had a conversation, a debrief conversation afterwards, which um, brought to my attention that all the, or most of the laughter in the room was not to find me funny or because they were actually amused. It was to save my face. So they made sure that they were um, honoring my apparent joke with laughter rather than having it fall flat and make me feel bad about myself. And no, Marco, it was not a joke about the outgoing president of this country that I currently reside in, but could have been, but was not it. I don't joke about politics in business context. That might be might be another strategy. Mind your emotions would be number 11. Emotions meaning your body language. So I don't know how many of you sat through presentations or have read books around this, that body language is telling us a story regardless of who we're interacting with, that um, arms folded across my chest will always mean rejection, and that somebody that looking down and not in your eyes is a sign of disinterest. Let me tell you, this is nonsense. There is no universal catalog of what body language means. Body language is a function of culture and a function of personality. Remember what I said in the beginning, one does not exclude the other. So, minding your emotions means that when you listen with intent, you want to calibrate to that person's body language. You want to observe how they posture, how they gesture repeatedly, and in what context they do which body motion. So sometimes you will have a conversation with maybe a team member, and it's not a nice conversation because you have to give them some unpleasant feedback. And you would expect them to look you in the eye to receive the feedback, but they're not looking at you. They're actually staring down, maybe at your kneecaps, and they're avoiding your gaze. And you might make that mean something negative. Remember, we're assuming positive intent, but your mind is telling you, because you've learned throughout your life that when we have a heart to heart, we pay respect to each other and we look at each other. Well, that person might be from a cultural background where it is inappropriate to stare back at you, maybe because you're a person of authority and they need to show deference, and they find it highly uncomfortable and impolite to return that gaze into your face, and they're actually showing you the utmost respect for them. So their normal does not match up with your normal. So body language is not universal. So you need to observe, you need to become a detective, as I said earlier. You want to practice your observational skills, And this is what NLP does. So I think it was Susie or Suzanne who said that she was interested in NLP. In NLP, we teach and we learn how to observe people's body language in connection with all their other behaviors and learn how to decipher what their verbal predicates that they're using, what their voice tonality, what their nonverbal cues, how they are a reflection of their model of the world, and how we can learn to draw better conclusions and not mind read, but draw conclusions based on our evidence based observation about what their state of mind is and how we can interpret their body language. So, mind your emotions, critically important. And here's one of my favorite ones. It's the last one in this series. As I said, there might be more than 12. There surely are more than 12 success strategies, but this is one of the ones that I like most because it is one that is often not taught in, well, in many cultures, this is not taught or not exemplified by our environment, by our parents, siblings, elders, teachers, to be vulnerable. And some of you might be familiar with the work of Dr. Brené Brown. She made a career around the concept of vulnerability. And I'm not going to steal her thunder. She's much, much better at this than I am. And yet I completely agree with her that showing vulnerability is a superpower and not a weakness. Now, too often in a male dominated, Western dominated work context, vulnerability is or has been put into the weakness basket. I'm saying this as a middle aged white man who has been raised in that context and who has been surrounded by mostly men in my workplace as in my career, at least in my earlier career. And vulnerability was something that I shied away from. And now, at a more advanced age and having practiced this, I have come to realize that I missed out on something. The more I can show to my environment that I am not good at something, or that I did make a faux pas, or that I made a mistake and that I received feedback that told me how it didn't work, that when I own up to that, when I show that I am not perfect, that I am not 100% competent in something, that it's not a ding in my credibility, that is actually showing my humanity. It's showing that I'm a human being, like I would suspect all of you on this call are humans. Maybe some of you are visiting from outer space and checking in on me, but I would suspect most of you are humans. We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. I think perfection is an illusion. There is no such thing as being 100% good at something. And even if you reach your perceived 100%, there's still a level up from that you were not aware that it exists because you didn't see it before you hit your perceived 100%. So rather than chasing that illusion of perfection, how about striving for excellence and continuous improvement and accepting along the way that we make mistakes and that we're still learners and not losers, that we still improve who we are, that we are on a constant path of getting better at what we do, at being good global professionals. And sometimes that means showing, hey, I screwed up. I didn't do this right. And can you show me how to do, or can you tell me what exactly was my mistake, or what could I do better next time? And or maybe can you forgive me for the mistake I just made because it may have hurt you emotionally or in any other way? So showing vulnerability is not a weakness, especially in cross-cultural context. It has served me and our clients quite well because it buys you credit. You make you invite people to make deposits in your account of um, what's the account of, I would say the emotional gratitude account. So keep that account data open. So in order to get it right globally, you need to get culture, because if you don't get culture, eventually it will get you. Not a line I invented. It was, I'm going to give full credit here. My daughter's English teacher, she said, if you don't get language, language will get you. And I thought, this is great. I'll borrow that and I'll edit that, because if you don't get culture, culture will get you. It will bite you in the behind. So you want to get it right, people. So if you're doing business globally, these are not soft skills. I despise that term anyway. These are bottom line relevant power skills. If you don't know how to relate to others, if you don't know how to work through these 12 strategies that I just showed you, you're not going to have the business results that you want in global business. So culture will get you. Your bank account will show it to you that you didn't get culture. So let's work on that. Some of these, or actually all of these strategies that I outlined here in more uh, improv way, are written down in this ebook that I published earlier this year. Hey, it was a weird year, wouldn't you agree? So I had time to write a little bit. So you can get that ebook. Here's a link up here above my face, right? Maybe I can move myself here and say, oh, here it is. See? That's the link. It will also be in an email that you get after this webinar. So you can download that ebook. It's a short read. I didn't write that much, but I think it's a good compendium of highlighting these success strategies, and it doesn't cost you a penny. So my gift to you. So I gave you something. I give you a little bit more, because some of you expressed interest. So let me tell you a little bit what we're going to do. This says here, dates are not, or this still has the December dates on it, I guess. We're doing this towards the end of January 2021. Dates are not completely fixed yet, but prepare for the last week of January. I had a webinar yesterday that was also appointing people at this online training. It is a 3-hour live online training on building your IQ, your IQ plus CQ plus EQ, IQ intelligence quotient, your intellectual prowess, CQ cultural intelligence, EQ emotional intelligence. We're doing a live online training in January, so dates to be fully confirmed before Christmas. So you'll get the notification from me when it will actually happen. So what's in it? So we're doing 2 times 90 minutes, live online business training. Live online meaning not recorded, not a on-demand thingy. It's you and me live together on Zoom. It's 2 90-minute sessions. Session 1 focuses on cultural intelligence. Session number 2 focuses on emotional intelligence. You will get a Globe Smart profile. So that is your cross-cultural assessment, your cultural profile. That's included in the session. You will also get a personality profile, which is the bank code breaker. I'll tell you about it when we get there. So you'll have your cultural assessment and your personality profile, what I talked about at the beginning. And you'll get an introduction to NLP. So those of you who said, hey, tell me more about this, an intro to NLP will part of that 2 times 90 minutes. And this will be on, well, again, end of January. Stay tuned. Um, Actually, I might have the confirmation for this by the end of today, if the global gods play in my favor, and you'll have that in the follow-up email to this session. Here's how you get a hold of me. So phone number is the office phone, works during my office hours, which are US Eastern time. The email works 24/7, so feel free to reach out for more questions or offline conversation. I see some of you are hopping off because they needed to go. Thank you very much for being here. Remember, 2 times 90 minutes live online, and in that course fee is included your personality profile and your GlobeSmart profile. The GlobeSmart profile is good for 6 months, and it is a beautiful platform with lots of resources that go way beyond what we're teaching in the 3-hour course. So those are the slides for today. I said I'll be done by 11:40. If there are more questions here, let me know now. I got 3 more minutes before I close out the session. Questions now or via email or phone later. So I just want to see, scan through the chat box that I didn't miss anything. Valley says, I usually think about scanning for indirectness. Yes. Well, both ways work. You can scan for indirectness and directness. Thank you for pointing that out, Valley. And then there is Suzanne. I rock. Well, thank you. I like that. January dates. Yes, you'll get them in the email. Nikki says Cheerio. I like that as well. All right, then. Since there are no more questions around the training course, at least not for now, I look forward to seeing all of you in January for that 3-hour session. Information, as I said, will be in the email. You'll get a link to the recording, a link to the ebook, and some more resources that I didn't even disclose yet. So you get a few more goodies in the email. Thank you very much for joining us today. This was the December 16 webinar on global success strategies. My name is Christian Höferle with the Culture Mastery. And if you're so inclined, and if you want to watch a webinar in German, join me tomorrow. There'll be another webinar for those of you who speak German. Oh, you love the shirt? Yeah, I will keep it on there. And it's not the best for this camera thing, but hey, I like the shirt too. Thank you, Tracy. All right. Thanks, everybody. Be safe. Stay home if you can. Wear a mask if you can't. Keep the world safe, and see you all again soon. Bye-bye.